Greetings, my fellow low Southern thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mango, South Florida. And today's date, Sunday, January 21st, 2018. It's like partly sunny right now in the Venice of America. And plus, I'm at CJ's Java Lounge, located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue, along the new River of Fort Lauderdale, southwest section of the Andrews Avenue Bridge. So a lot of folks were out there yesterday, anti-Trump, along at Largo and around the country, in Denver, and all these cities are all protesting on the government shutdown and calling them a fascist, a Nazi, and all that good stuff. And the funny thing about it was, and some people brought in like coffins, which is all well and good. I'm anti-war myself. But the question is, how come they didn't do it to the Obama administration? That's the thing I'm always real critical of. I don't see him out pouncing around when Barack Obama and his administration attacked Libya on a unilateral basis and sailed the humanitarian effort. Everyone's, oh, that's okay, that's exceptional. And of course, it's going on happening in Yemen with the U.S. bombs being supplied to Saudi Arabia, right? That's called exceptionalism. Now Trump's in there, everyone's manifesting, they call him a warmongering horror bag and so forth. But the whole thing is, my friends, you got to shut down the military-industrial complex. It's been going on for a very long time. And everyone became a geopolitical expert around 2016. It's called inconsistency. Why is that? It's only convenient for them. If their Lord and Savior is up there, they'll say it's okay. You get from both sides of the paradigm. When you folks are going to go out there, start thinking about that. I'm not saying all the people out there protesting are idiots, but you have to see things a lot broader than what it is. The banksters are trying to run everyone's lives. Trump right now is considered a bellboy based on his actions. Yes, I can be critical towards the man, but I'm not going to crucify him on everything if it doesn't have any merit. And of course, you got Occupy Democrats that are saying, oh, they're mostly Republicans, so you blame them for the shutdown. Shoot. Too much power in federal government. All you got to do is read the Constitution. Thoroughly, plain and simple. Another thing, too, you have to realize, my friends, that the president's actually an elected ambassador. Okay? So, and people, some of these folks want to give them their electoral college, go to popular vote. What you folks are doing right there is becoming the centralized states of America. So, you'd be a U.S. citizen, you'd be a CS citizen, right? Centralized state citizen. If you do the popular vote, you'll be focusing on 4 states: New York, California, Texas, and Florida. The rest of the states, to hell with them, especially the small towns. This is one of the reasons why we got electoral college. And when you go any further, a lot of states do have that law or statutes addressing that law. You got the majority of the votes. They get the electoral college votes with that. So you can't please everybody, right? Absolutely. But we have individuals out there look at the face value but not the fine print. Then you get swindled in the long run. So I have to always observe responsibly. Speaking of responsibly, I post a lot of stuff on Facebook by many of them are Democrats and Republicans, supported Section 7.2 of the FISA Act. Yes, a lot of them are pro-Big Brother, including dumbed down David Wasserman Schultz, Senators Bill Nelson, Marco Rubio, and Ted Deutsch. Yeah, Ted Deutsch. Another freedom-loving sap, freedom-hating sap. All you gotta do, folks, is read. Don't get distracted on what Trump's doing or when he's taking a dump or scratching his testicles. Who cares? You gotta go a lot broader than what it is going on around the world. A lot of folks, a lot of countries right now being bombarded with imperialism, New World Order agenda. Look what's going on in Africa. Look in areas of Nigeria and all that. It's been battling for so many years. It's insane. Even in Yemen, That's essential too. Now they want to focus on Iran and Syria, and give me a break. You gotta let our bureaucratic bobbleheads out there say, stop bending over for the order. A bunch of Uncle Tom, not just a bunch of Uncle Toms and Aunt Jemimas. I say that ethically. Well, I know I'm digressing a little bit, but I gotta get this off my chest now and then. Don't get too distracted. Look at the bigger picture. Have a balance in life. Yeah, I do my activism now and then. I chat with folks around everywhere, around the world, even in my own communities. Finesse. Some folks thought I was nuts at first, but not anymore. I'm not saying I'm better than them. Never was. Never had. But now they want to do this nuclear option. Please. We're going to put up more nuclear power plants on fault lines. Open up the market for solar energy. That'd be a great start. I remember the water powered vehicle. Look down on collective evolution. Look that up. And of course, how about hemp fuel? Henry Ford. Remember that? Papa Mechanics, December 1942 edition. Biomass engine. That runs hemp fuel. How come we're not using that? Big oil don't like it. Including Rex Tillerson. This one I'm going to be talking about by Rex Tillerson actually came from Newsbuzz exclusive. I read the article from Anti-War, and I posted on Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, and all that. So if you're going to follow me on that, that'd be cool too. But Kurt Nemo did an article. This is member content only. So if people want to read the article, I recommend you become a member, a supporter, do your pledge. It's worth it. You get non-partisan, no corporate free. People fund it. Folks like you and I. This is a new Newsbuzz exclusive, and I repeat myself. Tillerson announces illegal occupation in Syria. Let's see what this tough old bag has to say. But Kurt Nemo writes it, and he says here, and he's not an old bag, he's a great guy, all right? The Trump administration has finally clarified its stance on Syria. It plans to occupy portions of the country and removes its elected leader, Bashar al-Assad. For the same reason, it's of course predicated on the phony Islamic State threat. The latter is based on the bare excuse the United States must prevent al-Assad from butchering his own people. And after all, Syrians deserve democracy, American style, even at the price of 500 dead men, women, and children. But let us be clear, the United States will maintain a military presence in Syria, focused on ensuring ISIS cannot reemerge. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson declared on January 17th during a speech at Stanford University. He was accompanied by former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Woo! Kermit the Frog in the house. Tillerson promised free and transparent elections will result in permanent departure of Assad and his family from power. The process will take time, and we urge patience in the departure of Assad and the establishment of new leadership. Yes, my nanny. Yes, Mr. French. I will tell all the countries when to wipe their behinds. I'll go on. However, in 2015, a poll conducted on ORB International with the backing of the United States and Britain found that al-Assad has more support in the country than the CIA cobbled together moderate opposition. Moreover, the Syrians look more favorably on Iran than the Gulf states, which are largely responsible, along with the United States, for supporting al-Qaeda and its affiliates and spin-offs, including Nusra, now a component of Tahrir al-Sham, and the Islamic State. The offspring, the multiplication, same crap, different package, right? According to Tillerson, responsible change will arrive in an incremental process of constitutional reform and UN-supervised elections. Oh, man, this guy's such a clown. From ExxonMobil, yeah. He has a nice, big, beautiful house. $15 million? How glamorous. And some people say, oh, yeah, that's why we got these big money guys in there, so they can't be bought. Well, they still suck anyway. What else is new? Mr. Tillerson is, however, ignoring the failure of the so-called Geneva process, designed to establish a transitional government in Syria. It is opposed by Salafi groups fight to overthrow al-Assad. These groups wish to impose strict Sharia law across Syria, while others propose splitting the country up along ethnic and religious lines. This last solution is opposed by a majority of Syrians who want, according to Western polling, a multi-ethnic, and non-sectarian democracy. 70% of the polls force division of the country. Yes, leave them alone. Let the Syrian people decide, for goodness sakes. Good grief. It's like, will you like it? Will you like it? If someone tells you how to think and wipe your own behind? Come on. Pathetic. Let's see here. Tillerson contradicted this when he told attendees in California that there remains an unresolved conflict between the Syrian people and the Assad regime. A largely fictional situation, Tillerson insisted, can only be addressed through a UN-led political process put forth in UN Security Council Resolution 2254. Bring the UN involved, right? Yeah, UN knows best. That tells you how astute some of these folks are, right? Absolutely. But I'm not really too intrigued by any means. I will proceed. In addition, the ORB International poll found that more than 8% of the Syrians agree the Islamic State is a foreign group nurtured by the United States. Yeah, New World Order funded, damn right. This conclusion is supported by a 2012 declassified military intelligence report that predicted and welcomed the formation of a Salafist principality in eastern Syria and an al-Qaeda-controlled Islamic State in Syria and neighboring Iraq. Despite ample evidence, the U.S. supports foreign jihadi mercenaries in Syria, beginning with the CIA rat lines and Libya's transferring arms. It continued the charade of an interminable fight against the Islamic State in order to maintain an illegal military footprint in the country. Tillerson said the Pentagon will continue its open-ended occupation on the banner of fighting the Islamic State, which was largely defeated and driven from its stronghold by Russia and Iran. The accomplishment Trump subsequently took credit for. Secretary of State said the Islamic State was not completely defeated, and thus U.S. forces must remain. In addition, Tillerson said troops will remain to confront continued strategic threats from Iran. He said Iran is importing proxy forces in Syria. Never mind, these supposed proxies were invited into the country by the al-Assad government to defeat foreign mercenaries imported and supported by Saudi Arabia and the United States, as previously noted. Tillers' announcement is at odds with Trump's campaign promise that he will not support nation building abroad. It is the first official indication the U.S. plans to remain in Syria for a long haul. This became obvious in 2015 when the Pentagon established air bases in Kurdish-held areas in the Remlin district in the northeast of Al-Hashqab province and Harab village in southern Kobani. They were enlarged early in the following year. By the middle of 2017, the U.S. has increased the number of military posts in the territories PKK-PYD held Syrian territories to 10. In addition to U.S. forces, France stationed troops in military posts located in Mesthurnar Hill, south of Kobani. The British also have a base in Syria near Al-Tanf on Syria's border with Jordan and Iraq. In the Al-Hamad Desert region in the southeast of Homs district, Oya Ekonek Mogizaden, a former member of the Turkish parliament, head of the Department of International Relations at the University of Ankara, told Sputnik last January the Syrian Kurds are refusing to comply with decisions taken in the course of negotiations in Astana, and that makes this development with the base in the district of Rojava even more dangerous. The Astana talks between the Syrian government and opposition groups were held in Kazakh capital Astana last October. The base would have remained in secret if not for publication of a map of American positions by the Turkish news state news. The Anadolu news agency revealed a total of 10 U.S. bases in Syria. The publication of the secret military information exposes coalition forces to unnecessary risk and may disrupt operations to defeat ISIS. Although we cannot independently verify the sources that contribute to this publication, we would be very concerned if NATO allies officials deliberately put forces at risk, said Pentagon spokesman Major Adrian Merkin-Galloway. According to Russia, which is invited into Syria by the government, there is no legal basis for positioning U.S. troops in the country. The United States does not advertise its bases very much, and the fact that these bases do not have a legal basis and is also obvious to all, remarked Russian Foreign Intelligence Minister Sergei Lavrov during a press conference held last July. Russia has two military bases in Syria, one established by the Soviets at Tillerson in 1971, the second established at the Hayim airfield in 2015. Syria leased both bases to Russia for 49 years in January 2017. Additionally, Turkey established a military base in an area known as the Shield of Euphrates in northern Syria. The Turks carried out operations in the region between Euphrates River to the east and a rebel-held area from Azaz to the west. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, that's the president from Turkey, said the operations were aimed at the Islamic State and the Kurdish terror groups that were threatening their country in northern Syria. The end game not mentioned by Rex Tillerson isn't peace in Syria or transitional government and democracy as claimed. Rather, it's a balkanization along ethnic and religious lines, a process now entrusted to the Kurds. Throughout the history, the imperialist power have been facilitating the power of most intolerant, bigoted ideologies and groups in the region, starting from the Balfour Declaration, passing through the infamous Paykat Agreement, and ending in the invasion of Iraq and Libya, before making their way into Syria. The latest group to gain full support of the U.S. on the ground in Syria is the Syrian Kurdish YPG forces, writes Marwa Azma of the Lebanese International University and Marif University at Beirut. The process began in earnest around World War I at the San Remo Conference in 1920, when France, who held the mandate over Syria and Lebanon, decided to split the country apart along sectarian line. Ethnic tension was later stirred up by the Muslim Brotherhood, a known British intelligence asset that later collaborated with the CIA, and the Kurds, who objected the Ba'ath regime of Hafez al-Assad, to culminate in a ruthless crackdown by al-Assad in the city of Hama. During the Bush administration, the idea of creative destruction modified Marxian economic concepts based on a long-standing Israeli foreign policy objective released by Michael Ledeen was put in place by Vice President Dick Cheney's neocon. It's called for reordering the Arab world, beginning in the destruction of Iraq and moving to Syria and Lebanon. See, clean break, a new strategy for securing the realm. The following new Middle East speech delivered by Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in 2006, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, a retired colonel of the U.S. National War Academy, prepared a map detailed proposed a balkanization of the Middle East. The redrawn and partition of the Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean shores of Lebanon and Syria to Anatolia, Asia Minor, Arabia, and the Persian Gulf and the Iranian Plateau responds to broad economic, strategic, and military objectives which are part of a long-standing Anglo-American and Israeli agenda in the region, writes Mahdi Daris Nezamaria. The Middle East has been conditioned by outside forces into a powdered keg that is ready to explode with the right trigger, possibly the launching of the Anglo-American and or Israeli air raids against Iran and Syria. A wider war in the Middle East could result in the redrawn borders that strategically advantage the Anglo-American interests in Israel. In effect, this is what the manufactured civil war in Syria is all about. The insertion of U.S. troops and French and British as supports for the Kurds, despite Turkey's vehement opposition, are designed to cleave Syria into ethnically separate enclaves as Zygmunt Brzezinski strategized to prevent collision and maintain security dependence among the vassals and keep the tributaries polite and protected and keep the barbarians from coming together. That's Zygmunt Brzezinski. You know I can't stand that prick. Excuse my language. The Secretary of State Tillerson, of course, has couched a plan to reorder Syria in the language of democracy and human rights, when in the fact is the opposite case. Donald Trump has inherited the neocon dream. His general may eschew the old screw of neocons, discredit as they are, but when the rubber meets the road, a similar ideology is at work within the Trump administration. This had made an absurd mockery of the president's promise to avoid nation building, a promise he had never intended to keep, and served instead as yet another deceitful election gimmick. Yes, and that's how I see it. And I can see Rex Tillerson going to the front line. I can see how tough that old bag of you know what in the front line of battle. Probably still on his knee pads, symbolically speaking, for the big oil companies, such as ExxonMobil, which he was with them for a very long time. The empire continues, and everyone's worried about sexism and all that, right, by Donald Trump. That's nothing more than a distraction. If you're going to be true activists, my friends, or protesters, be consistent, not out of convenience. These days, we all have to have lives, don't get me wrong. And beware of the face value. Always focus on the fine print. This is nothing more than a New World Order agenda. Gabriel Brzezinski's legacy. He will climax in his own grave if it gets fulfilled. And many beautiful people in that region are going to suffer. And you're going to go up and stand in the football game, go, God bless our military, long live the empire? I don't. I want my brothers and sisters who are serving in the military support common defense, not imperial offense. That should be their job, period. And other people in Israel is tired of it too. Some great people, great folks in that country are tired of the political mockery. And they're suffering from the hands of their criminal elements as well in their own government. Staying aside is a great man. The person may have a lot of rough edges. But the people in Syria got to decide what they want. They don't want the nation split up. Not at all. That's why I say, leave them alone. Bring all of our troops home. And the people in France, Britain, Israel, you should tell your government to do the same damn thing. Completely unacceptable. They can take their one world order agenda and shove it. And that's all I got to say about it. But it's a very good article. All right. Speaking of imperialism, another one here. That's what came from the Land Destroyer report. It came out January 20th by Olsen Gunnar from the New Eastern Outlook. Continuity of agenda. U.S. encirclement of China continues under Trump. It reads here, the United States has pursued a decades-long policy of encircling, containing, and, if possible, undermining China as a large strategy of achieving and maintaining what U.S. policy appears called primacy over Asia. U.S. policy has led to deeply rooted networks operating within China's borders and along China's geopolitical peripheries to divide and destabilize the immense and increasingly powerful Asian state. These networks are funded and supported regardless of who occupies the White House, while the rhetorics shift from president to president regarding why the U.S. is providing so-called activists and opposition front aid. The aid and the agenda it serves continues. Under current, the U.S. President Donald Trump's predecessor, President Barack Obama, this ongoing policy was marketed to the American and international public as a pivot to Asia. It was spun as means to the U.S. to re-engage with Asia, but in reality constituted an overt attempt to co-opt the governments of China's neighbor and break up the region's growing ties with Beijing. Excuse me. Obama's pivot was a failure, but one with the greater context of general decline in U.S. primacy, was both in the Asian Pacific region and around the world. Under Trump, this policy of encircling and containing China continues. Is now marketed to the public as Indo-Pacific strategy, and with the U.S. force to court India, Australia, and Japan on the fringe of Asia-Pacific after failing to make progress within the Asian Pacific itself. It is important to understand just long-term these policies are so what when Trump announces them to the public understands that it's not Trump's policy, but simply Trump continuing to carry out the agenda of the very special interests, the so-called deep state. He vowed to resist upon taking office. Understand that these policies serve special interests at the cost of the American public, helped inoculate the public to rhetoric claiming that confronting China and destabilizing Asia is somehow part of making America great again. So, as I say, the more things change, the more it stays the same, right? Absolutely. One moment here. I get shot my tea in. This has been happening. It's been happening for centuries now. United States, Britain, and all that. And let's go see what's Tibet has to say on this. Tibet is one of the oldest and most clear examples of political controversy used by Washington to target the undermined regime's credibility. The centerpiece of U.S. strategy in Tibet has been independence movement led by the Dalai Lama, so-called spiritual leader of Tibet and a political figure of the U.S. through the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. CIA has backed both politically and military since at least as early as the 1950s. And there is I did a show on that too, a segment on the Dalai Lama was considered a CIA asset. Interesting stuff, right? Upon the U.S. State Department's own website, under section titled Foreign Relations of the United States, 64 to 68, Volume 30, China, 341 Memorandum for the 303 Committee, it is admitted that the CIA Tibet program part, which were initiated in 1956 with the cognizance of the committee, is based on U.S. government commitments made to Dalai Lama in 1951 and 1956. The program consists of political action, propaganda, paramilitary, and intelligence operations appropriately coordinated with and supported by less than one line of source text not declassified. That's how cute, right? It happens all the time. The report also states that in the political action and propaganda field, Tibetan program objectives are aimed toward lessening the influence and capabilities of the Chinese regime through support among Tibetans and among foreign nations of the concept of an autonomous Tibet under the leadership of Dalai Lama, toward the creation of a capability for resistance against possible political developments inside Tibet and the containment of the Chinese Communist expansion, in pursuit of U.S. policy objectives stated initially in NSC 5913/1.2, 6 lines, sources not declassified. Now, what a tradition, right? It should be noted that the document specifically mentions the containment of Chinese Communist expansion, the policy of creating autonomous regions within the sovereign state aimed at lessening the influence and capabilities of a targeted central government is a policy that should look familiar to any impartial observer of contemporary U.S. foreign policy. It is not only precisely the same policy the U.S. openly pursues in the occupation and attempted partitioning of the Syrian Arab Republic, but it's also the very same policy the U.S. is pursuing in another region of China, its western Xinjiang province. Separatist terrorism in Xinjiang. China's western province of Xinjiang is home to some 21 million people. Of those 21 million, less than half are to Turkic ethnic group known as Uyghurs, practitioners of Islam. The U.S. has used terrorist network developed with the NATO member Turkey to infiltrate, pervert, and radicalize a fringe minority of the Uyghur community, while the U.S. itself openly funds and promotes separatism via political opposition fronts and across local and national media. Turkey's notorious Grey Wolves terrorist organization was wielded by NATO during the Cold War as a tool of political coercion. It is still used today by U.S. NATO interests, both within Turkey and beyond, even as far as Southeast Asia. The Grey Roos has been implicated in training and arming terrorist cells within Xinjiang. The overt U.S. support for separatism in Xinjiang can be easily found in U.S. Department-funded National Endowment for Democracy website. The U.S. is extensively engaged in political subversion with China that was necessary to divide its funding of subversive activities into multiple categories: China, Hong Kong, China Mainland, China Tibet, and China Xinjiang East Turkestan. U.S. supports of separatism is exposed forthright in the conclusion of the term Eastern Turkestan. It's being the name of political entity used back agitators and militants seek to crave off from Chinese territory. Over $250 million U.S. tax dollars is allotted annually to the World Uyghur Congress, the WUC, a German-based front with offices in Washington, headed by Rabia Kadir, who openly pursues separatism and who refers to China's Xinjiang province as East Kurdistan. The U.S. in its various policy papers regarding regime change elsewhere around the world has repeatedly admitted that peaceful movements like the WUC attempts to portray itself as are unlikely to succeed without an armed component to prevent a targeted government from simply uprooting foreign-funded sedition. Thus, just as the U.S. State Department admitted it has done in Tibet, the U.S. is clearly engaged via NATO proxies in the separatist political fronts and openly funds and directs efforts to lessen the influence and capabilities of Beijing and Xinjiang by attempting to create the autonomous region of East Turkestan. Demonstrations in Hong Kong. Hong Kong was taken by the British Empire from China by force and occupied for over a century when the British finally departed in Hong Kong in 1997. It imposed upon Beijing demands, instituting what was known as the One Country, Two Systems under the Sino-British Joint Declaration. In essence, the British attempt to maintain Hong Kong as a political and economic foothold despite returning it to Beijing's control. Beijing has incrementally dismantled this arrangement and has steadily reasserted its sovereignty over its returned territory. To counter this, the U.S. and its European allies have organized, funded, and directed pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, who focus primarily to coercing Beijing to uphold the UK's partying demands. The so-called Umbrella Revolution was in 2014 was a textbook example of what was now known as the Color Revolution. The protests of leaders openly funded by the U.S. State Department, including Martin Lee, who had literally visited Washington, D.C., and the event, including full video here, pleading for aid just for months before the protest unfolded. Another political figure crafted by Americans' immense media influence is Joshua Wong, a university student who repeatedly denied his sudden fame and political influence stemmed from ties with Washington, but who eagerly traveled to Washington, D.C. to collect an award from an NDC subsidiary, Freedom House, upon protest conclusion. And he made a documentary. He did a documentary on it, which was a good documentary, but sometimes you gotta look at these rallies and protests if they're organic or synthetic. Well, that's what the guys from the chap from Land Destroyer says. Something's different. Looks like he has been groomed up, allegedly, right? Pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, the full context of Washington's long-term strategy to contain and encircle China are transparently illegitimate. While figures like Wong insist they are pursuing democracy and self-determination for Hong Kong, with the movement entirely propped up by the United States and its European allies, it is clear that they represent foreign interests, specifically the expanse of any notion of democracy or self-determination for Hong Kong. That's like some people may be being played, right? Yeah. Destabilizing Southeast Asia is clear enough that China is being systematically targeted and undermined within its own borders by U.S. foreign policy, stretching from the end of World War II, continuing to present day. However, just as important are U.S. efforts to encircle, contain, and undermine China along its peripheries. This includes Southeast Asia, where the U.S. has spent decades attempting to influence, control the region. This includes the outright invasion of Vietnam, proxy wars fought in neighboring Laos and Cambodia, and political upheaval the U.S. has sponsored everywhere from Myanmar to Malaysia to Thailand to Indonesia. During the administration of the U.S. U.S. President George W. Bush Jr., the U.S. has lined up proxy regimes: Thailand under Thaksin Shinawatra, Malaysia and Anwar Ibrahim, and Myanmar under Aung San Suu Kyi to a lesser extent. Cambodia under Hun Sen served U.S. interests until only recently. However, of these four nations, only Myanmar represents partial success. Thailand has ousted Shinawatra and his proxies from power. Anwar Ibrahim resides in prison, and Cambodia increasingly built ties with Beijing at Washington's expense. So U.S.-funded networks seek to impede Southeast Asian ties with China through a variety of activities, including political destabilization and terrorism. The U.S. also funds organizations posing as environmental and human rights activists that impede regional development driven by U.S. infrastructure projects under the guise of protecting the environment and the livelihood of villagers living near the future site of rail, dam, and other major projects. In any given nation across Southeast Asia, the U.S. NED, along its various subsidiaries and partners, can be found fueling social division, conflict, even attempting to impede sectarian operations against suspiciously convenient terrorism. More recently, the U.S. under Trump has increased subversive activities in Thailand and Cambodia as both nations to further uproot U.S.-backed opposition groups. Upon a map, if China finds itself facing U.S.-backed subversion along the west in Tibet, Xinjiang, and its short border with U.S.-occupied Afghanistan, and to the east with U.S. troops notably stationed in Korea and Japan, then U.S. subversion in Southeast Asia represents a third front of adversity fueled by Washington, and one that now continues under the Trump Indo-Pacific strategy. So it's a lot of stuff is, sticking their nose don't belong, right? U.S. occupation of Afghanistan. Of course, there are multiple theories to explain Washington's perpetual invasion of Afghanistan, including its proximity to Pakistan, Russia, and Iran. But Afghanistan also shares a short border with China. U.S. military presence on China's far west border helps bookend America's substantial military presence in Korea, Japan, and the Philippines to China's far east. The Korean Peninsula. The U.S. continued occupying South Korea following an armistice signed in 1963, making it the effective end of the Korean War. The U.S. has since intentionally and continuously provoked North Korea, creating a strategy of tension and thus perpetually justifying its military presence on the peninsula. The U.S. has openly and repeatedly called a regime change in North Korea. It has published entire policy papers detailing strategies for the invasion, occupation, and subjugation of North Korea. And while the U.S. insists its presence in the North Korean peninsula is a matter of global peace and security, it's transparently obvious that it remained involved and in fact fueling the conflict for the sole purpose of maintaining a military presence toward China's east as part of its wider long-term containment policy. Rearming Japan. After Japan's defeat in World War II, the island nation adopted a pacifist foreign policy. It has refused to involve itself in foreign interventions and maintain what it terms self-defense forces. Its constitution prohibits a rearmament and the use of warfare to resolve disputes. The Constitution states specifically, 1. Aspiring sincerely to international peace based on justice and order. The Japanese people forever renounced war was a sovereign right of the nation, and the threat of use of force as means of settling international disputes. 2. In order to accomplish the aim of preceding paragraph, land, sea, and air force, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. The rights of belligerency of the state will not be recognized. Yet now the U.S. funds its influence in Asian Pacific, have there been attempts to pressure the Japanese government to amend its constitution to help augment the U.S. military aggression across the region. Far from conspiracy theory, a prominent Western policy analyst openly acknowledged that there is their coverage of Japan's defense policy. Defense News in 2015 article, Japan pursues renminbi despite opposition, will report that efforts by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to normalize Japan's security posture and bolster its U.S. alliance against China hit an obstacle when the lower House Commission of the Constitution declared Abe's, sorry about that, where am I at? Abe administration are unconstitutional. Paragraph 2 of Article 9 does not grant any legal standing for military activities abroad. Kabarashi is reported to have said going to war abroad to help a friendly nation is a violation of Article 9. He said, Japan possesses the ability to more than adequately defend itself from any aggressor, including China. Furthermore, if free of Washington's perverse influence bending Tokyo toward a confrontation with Beijing, China and Japan could forge economic and defense pacts of their own that would make possible confrontations even more remote than they are already. U.S. ties to Asian states include Japan represents a rather transparent effort to augment U.S. primacy, offering little incentive to those being used. Japan, in other words, is viewed as an expendable buffer between the U.S. hegemonic ambitions and the states that is targeted to achieve their hegemony. Japan would then be the first to pay the price for Washington's geopolitical miscalculation, vice versa. Beijing, that these policies have been pursued for decades, indifferent to the Washington House's occupants, help shed light on those special interests that truly drive U.S. policy and use political theater like that provided by the current Trump administration. Has covered to continue with its own impunity. In the past, when the U.S. had held uncontested global hegemony, both after World War II and again shortly after the Cold War, America paid few direct consequences for its actions abroad. Today, however, as U.S. hegemony wanes and multipolar balance of global power emerge, the U.S. will increasingly pay a price for its attempt to cling to its unipolar international order. It is a price that the American people will pay economically and in terms of blood of the armed forces. A price that American interests will continue shifting onto American people themselves for as long as possible. The Trump campaign mantra of Make America Great Again echoes hollows in the face of this reality, exemplified in Asia in terms of U.S. policy versus Beijing, but reality that is repeated across. Let me see here. Yeah, pursuing policies by force unelected special interests at the cost of those who voted for him in office. American position internationally will continue to toe the foe as more resources are poured into futile efforts to reverse this otherwise irreversible trend. America will never be great again. The whole thing is, like I said before, the United States has to stop being an empire, period. This is why I'm really touchy in these areas. And I do find this is a complete turnoff when you got folks out there trying to make things like what's better for them and the hell with the people. The folks in the Asia Pacific don't want the United States or any aggressors in their realm. So we're going to end this empire, let these people leave the be, and it may not be perfect, but we can do a lot better. So that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us about your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you have something interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. You keep me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/Network3. If you want to be a donor, that'd be great. You hit me on Gab, which is GAB.ai. In addition, you can email me at lookaluck3@gmail.com or the encrypted ones, lookalucknumbers 03@protonmail.com. All right, my friends, that's all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. Let's always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.